day began in the early hours of this morning with the Allied Expeditionary Force conducting a major assault along the northwestern coast of France. Officials have confirmed the landings were effective, and the troops have pushed several miles inland. Following the launch, General Eisenhower addressed the occupied nation saying, "The day will come when I shall need your united strength."
Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Kasia Madera. I'm a BBC News presenter, but I'm putting the news aside for a moment to do something very, very special. I'm going to be speaking to my very dear friend, Sam Naz, who is also a news presenter. She works for Sky. She worked for the BBC as well, the face of BBC Three. She was a journalist for many, many years and continues to work within journalism, but she's done something incredibly, incredibly special because together with Christopher Hanvey, they have produced a film during the pandemic, which is just unbelievable. It's such an achievement given all the restrictions that we've been coping with the lockdowns as well. So congratulations to both of you. And the film itself, it's called Liberté, and it's a very poignant word, and we'll find out exactly why it's such a special word and why it's said in French in just a moment. But the story is about a woman, Sam, who has given up everything. She has made the ultimate sacrifice when it comes to helping the Allies during the Second World War. And before anybody says another war film, this is not another war film. This is a story that I have never heard, that I think there are many people out there who will not have heard the story of this exceptionally brave woman. She is called Noor Inayat Khan. And Sam, just tell us a little bit about her.
She's a woman of Indian descent, a Muslim woman who had this key role during World War II. And it's extraordinary. She, her background is fascinating in itself, but for her to then put all that aside, she didn't have to do this, and to sign up to join the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, as a wireless operator. She was the first female wireless operator to be sent into occupied France. And that is extraordinary. It was one of the most dangerous jobs that they had. The life expectancy was just 6 weeks, I think, was the life expectancy of that job. So she knew going into it that she was risking everything. And so this, this petite young woman put herself forward, was sent out there alone, and went on to be a key communications link to London and the Allies, and had this remarkable role in the war that I just wanted to find out more and more about. And so I over the years, I revisited her story. I spent a lot of time at the National Archives and the Imperial War Museum, looking her up and finding out more and going through those remarkable old documents and her files. And I don't know, her story just really got under my skin, to be honest with you. I just couldn't really get her out of my head. I became quite obsessed. So I thought, well, okay, what can I do here? And there have been countless books written about her. There have been documentaries where she's been mentioned. Obviously, the news coverage, news articles have been written about her. So I wanted to do something that I thought was different and hadn't been done. And so I went about writing a screenplay, and, the aim was to put her front and center on the big screen. And that's where we are today.
It really is. It's an incredibly poignant film, and it's very, well, it just captures her so much. I wonder, Christopher, if we can bring you in. When Sam, because Sam has been, as she was describing, she's been researching Noor's story for so many years. Had you heard about Noor? And when Sam told you about her, what was your initial reaction?
I had never heard about Noor myself either, and I'm pretty well educated on a lot of stories, and particularly real life stories, because I'm always searching for that unique kind of story to tell as a filmmaker. And this was just completely, I knew nothing about her. And I do have military history in my family as well. So in World War I and World War II, up until recent times. So I'm always searching for that kind of perfect war film, I suppose. And nothing really quite sat right with me. Nothing really quite intrigued me enough. And I read Sam's initial feature script, and I was just blown away, not only by the writing, but by Noor as a character and her story. And that's the type of stories I want to tell. Like Noor feels still like an outsider, if that makes any sense at all, because you know the concept of what is a hero, and what a hero looks like, what a hero sounds like, what a hero is, and a hero on top of everything being a woman in World War II is kind of still unique, which it shouldn't be, but you know, here we are. I mean, here we are in 2021. There's not enough stories, particularly about women who were heroes in World War II. So I'm always interested in stories that are kind of outside the realm of the mainstream anyway. And Noor's story, even though, you know, her background wasn't necessarily the outsider, or kind of, she didn't have any kind of like punk aspirations like I do, but her story was compelling because, you know, it's not told enough, because of who she was, her background, her cultural background, her artistic background as well. She was a musician, and I suppose her willingness to sign up for this war that, you know, ultimately led to her death, and right up until the end, she always believed in what she was fighting for, and that's kind of I think that's inspiring for anyone. So it's exactly why I signed up. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's an incredible script, incredible character, and I hoped that I could bring my own kind of sensibilities to it, my background, my culture, you know, and I think I've done that, whilst being respectful to Noor's story and Sam's script.
It is an incredible story, and it's a very powerful script. And it's important to stress that, Sam, you wrote the screenplay. Of course, you've spent so many years researching Noor's very, very courageous story. It is a story that, of course, it ends tragically, without giving the ending away, but we know that it ends very tragically. And Sam, that's something that you wanted to portray. You were very conscious of her bravery, and you weren't afraid of expressing that in your screenplay, and then in the film itself.
It is a tragic ending, and it's, you know, her sacrifice. I really wanted that to be shown front and center with her, because she knew her time was running out. You know, I absolutely believe that she knew that. You know, she was held for 10 months by the Nazis. She was quizzed and questioned and interrogated and tortured for that long, and yet she did not crack. And that is extraordinary. You know, there are some of the documents at the National Archives. There are statements from some of the Nazis who had interrogated her, and they talk about her, and they talk almost with admiration of her, about how she just did not give them anything. She was continuously misleading them to the end. She was, you know, they never got to know her real name. You know, they knew her as Madeline, Agent Madeline. That was her SOE name. So, you know, that's how little she gave away. And that's extraordinary, being subjected to all that brutality and the mind games and the solitary confinement, and what that must have done to her. And yet she still remained loyal to her team and to the cause. And, you know, I just think that was so important to get that across, and to show that courage and that bravery and resilience, really extraordinary resilience, that meant that she, you know, knowing, I think in the end, knowing that she was, you know, the time was running out for her, but the war was being won. So her contribution was worth something. And so I think, you know, that was really important. That was, you know, that's what made her a hero, really. You know, so many aspects. Her going in there in the first place made her a hero, but her doing that and being subjected to all of that brutality and remaining silent in the face of it, and not giving up her colleagues and the people she was fighting with, essentially, and supporting, is just an extraordinary tribute to her, and that's what I wanted this to be.
She ultimately paid such a heavy, heavy price, the ultimate price. She ended up in Dachau concentration camp. The journey there, Christopher, was incredibly brutal. You portray that. I have to be honest, it's not an easy watch. When you watch Liberté, you do portray that, and I know that was something that you brought to the film. The brutality, the violence, it's there. We see what she experienced. It's a difficult watch. Just explain to us your reasoning behind using that and showing that.
That was my pitch to Sam, really, how I would direct it. I think my pitch was really that I think the biggest and the best tribute we could have made to Noor Inayat Khan was to show an audience just a glimpse of what she went through. To jump on Sam's comment, that I think that what she went through and how she still kept her cool and still didn't crack is what made her a hero. And I thought it was very, very important to give an audience at least a glimpse of the brutality. You're right, it's not easy, but it's really interesting how, in the grand scheme of the film, it's maybe a minute and a half in total of it, but there's a reason why I wanted to be that brutal, and that was really to show her resilience and to show really what made her a hero, because it's easy. I think it's easy to sanitize this particular period, particularly now. People are really forgetting the brutality of that war in particular, many other wars, of course, but it's easier now to look back with not rose tinted glasses, but like frosted glasses, and not realize exactly what the Nazis were capable of. And I think most people in Noor's situation, what she went through, and by the way, what we show is a tip of the iceberg. I mean, I could have done a 17-minute film of her torture, and that's another version of this film, right? But who would, I mean, people who would sit through that. I would, because I believe that's another way of telling it. But I knew that the best tribute to her was to show at least a glimpse of what she went through, which I think enhances, the main bulk of those scenes between her and her interrogator. I think that really enhances the uneasiness maybe that an audience feels, the fear, the dread, the anxiety. And I felt if I was to just disregard that, disregard the violence, because I'm uncomfortable with violence too, particularly when it seems to be just there to, I don't know, like to titillate, to entertain, because it could also, Noor's story could very easily turn into an action movie, I didn't want it to be cartoonish. I don't want the violence to be cartoonish. I wanted it to be real and brutal, and it's quick, and that's truthful as well. So I thought this is the only way to tell her story, in my opinion. To sanitize her story in this film is not a tribute to her. That's just using her and using her story for some other reason, and it's not a tribute to her if we don't do that. I mean, I honestly felt that, and it's hard for people to watch, particularly to watch a woman going through that, but hey, that was real and that happened, and that was the tip of the iceberg, I think, not just for Noor, but for many, many other people, men and women, in that situation.
It is, of course, very difficult to watch those scenes, and it's interesting that it is such a short amount of the film, and yet it's so powerful. I wonder, when it comes to actually acting those scenes, Sam, of course, you wrote the screenplay, you lived Noor's life for so many years when you were researching it, but to then bring it to action, to actually act those scenes, it can't have been easy. It must have been really, really difficult. Just talk us through the process that you went through.
Acting was tough. This was a tough role. I knew it was going to be. I wrote it, so I knew it was going to be tough. I knew the vision that Christopher wanted to bring to it, so I had to fully commit. There was no, half-heartedly going into this thinking, oh, we're in lockdown, I'll do it. And, I had to commit fully, and that meant training beforehand. And, Christopher is a boxing coach, so we trained, and we physically got into that character through those boxing sessions, which helped me so much to just have that physical strength for some of those scenes that require a lot of, quite brutal movements and, holding still in quite difficult positions. And, that's something I'd never done before. So that was really, really challenging. And the training beforehand and the rehearsals that we had beforehand really, really helped with that. We also had a fight director who came on board and helped me deal with how to actually go through those motions and what will work on camera. And that was a whole new language. I had to learn a whole new language of stunts over Zoom, so because it was lockdown, so we did all that over Zoom. And then in person physically, we were training in the park, and we just got into that routine, which really, really helped me physically embody Noor, and especially during those vulnerable moments for her. So that was really, really challenging, really challenging. A lot of this character in the way that it's written is unsaid. She, Noor doesn't speak much in this, but she speaks volumes at the same time with how little she says. And I had to convey that physically, whether it was in my face or my eyes or, in my movements. And, that was a real education, to be honest with you, complete education. It's not something I'd ever done before. And it was a far cry from my day job.
Christopher, in that case, how do you get that expressiveness from Sam? Of course, we know Sam on the TV, and we know just how brilliant she is when she's a news presenter and anchor. But this is, as Sam was saying, it's so, so different. And to get those moments, there's so much said in Noor's eyes, the fear and the courageousness. There's so many layers to this person, and it's all done through, so much of it is done through the eyes.
It was a lot of talks, and I was lucky to be there from the early development of the short, so I could just put in what I thought. There's a lot of long talks about her, and we did have very long talks about cutting dialogue, right? If I remember correctly, my thought was the tricky thing with the film is the interrogator basically has all the dialogue, and Noor doesn't, but that's true. So how do we portray that? It's hard for any actor to act without words. As soon as you take a dialogue away from an actor, bless them, it kind of freaks them out a little bit in general. So I knew I was asking a lot of Sam to convey this character, this icon, let's be honest, with very little dialogue. And what I think really it was Sam, I think, needed to have trust in me that I knew what I wanted and I knew how to capture it, and I knew exactly the shots I needed. And we were really prepped for this, and we'll talk about that later, but I knew exactly what shots I needed and how I would cut it together really as well to convey her Sam's performance, but without Sam doing the work, and without Sam being within that character and being in that in that mode, I suppose, in that energy of Noor, then there would be nothing to watch. And it's a very dangerous game to play as an actor and as a director, because you don't quite know what you have really until you actually see it in front of you on your computer. But you know, I think the physical training that we did together, that brought in a lot of trust. The physical, if I'm probably, hopefully I'm right in saying this, I think the physical training that we did, the physical aspects of that, I think for me anyway, it felt like really informed Sam's performance as Noor as well, because Sam needed to be physically within her own body as to be able to portray Noor in the way we did. So those the physical training, and it brought, I mean, it gave us a lot of trust as well, because I was literally coaching her a new skill, boxing. But that alone we gained a lot of trust even within those within those sessions. And I think for this particular role, the stunts aside, I think that it informed the whole kind of journey of Noor, and Sam's journey playing Noor. And I think it really, without it, it may have been a different performance, but of course we'll never know.
We spoke about the physicality, the violence, but Sam, you also touched upon the mind games, the gaslighting, the manipulation that the SS officer had with Noor. Now, I'm understanding that we will never know verbatim what was said in during the torture, and let's be honest, it was brutal, it was torture. There is one thing that the SS officer said that it almost seems to catch Noor off guard. And I wonder if you know which moment I'm talking about. Just talk us through that moment and why it was so important for you to write that in.
Yes, so there's a moment within one of the interrogation scenes where, you know, it's things are reaching a climax, really. You know, we're towards the end of the film, and you know, things are looking good for the Allies. However, they're looking not so good for Noor, and they're also looking not so good for the Nazis. And so in his desperation, the interrogator does say something to her, you know, which does, you know, I hope that this is conveyed in me when he says it, but he basically tells her, you know, he's telling her that he doesn't understand why she's being so loyal to the British. You know, why is she being so loyal? You know, she doesn't even look like them, you know. And that is, you know, I wanted to convey that she is a woman of color in this role, and women and men of color also fought in the war. And these are stories we are only just now, you know, are starting to hear more widely about. And, you know, this is, you know, decades on from the war. And why do we not know these stories? And I just wanted to hint at that. And I wanted the audience to remember, you know, she is a woman of color doing this. And I just felt that line, that moment, it hurts her. It hurts her when he says that. And she knows, you know, this is someone who will have experienced, you know, racism in her life. You know, we all have. People of color can attest to that. But like, I just wanted, you know, it's a short film. It's a lot of it, I hope, is nuanced, and it's, you know, subtle, and but there are a lot of messages that I wanted to convey in the film. And that was one of them, that a woman of color sacrificed so much for this. Go and do your research, and you'll find that many women and men of color sacrificed so much in that war, and the wars preceding it, and the wars since. And you know, we absolutely need to remember that in the end, these wars are, you know, won and lost together, as you know, and we worked side by side. So that was, I just wanted to get that across.
There's so much within the film that is, as you say, nuanced, and there's so much expression, and so much comes from Noor's eyes as you're acting, Noor, through your performance. Christopher, let's talk about the performance of the actor who played the SS officer. Now it's a difficult one to do, isn't it? You know, just horrific what he's doing to Noor, what we know that happened to Noor. it's a very powerful performance.
Oh, it's powerful, it's incredible, and it's bold and brave as well, because I'm sure it's not easy to play a Nazi as anything else, right? It's hard. I think it's hard for an actor. I'll say this first. It's hard for an actor to try and feel, because most good actors want to try and see some humanity in the character they're playing, right? It's almost impossible with some certain characters to do that, and certain actors to do that. And I think Oliver Boot, who plays Kiefer, he played him in a way that it was not that what I didn't want to do with that particular character is make him sympathetic, have the audience sympathize with him. They might think at moments in the film that, oh, he's actually quite nice, but when he's not, right? There are moments where he seems to be human when he's not. No, I didn't want Oliver, to play him like just with one note, but it was very, very clear that we didn't want this film to become but Noor and Kiefer are friends in the end anyway. They get each other, they understand each other, which I think most films, are like, if they had these two characters in this particular script, would make it go down that way, right? And we'll make something, our relationship or friendship happen. That doesn't exist. So it's a very tricky balance for an actor to find that humanity in someone who's done some really evil things and is aware they're doing it. They're not psychopathic. They're making a choice to do the things that they do. But I wanted the audience to kind of see the ridiculousness in this character too, because he postures, he says ridiculous things, and I want it to be okay for the audience to laugh at him, because that's the best thing we can do as well, and in this situation, in my opinion. But again, to find the right actor who doesn't judge the character in a way where, well, I'll just play it, this is evil, I'll play it just evil and that's it, with no nuance within your own kind of evil kind of being, right? And it was important to find an actor who could find the nuance within the character, respect the character enough to find the nuance within it. So as a consequence, it would enhance the film and enhance Noor's heroic nature if the audience could look at him and laugh at him, or not actually feel sorry for him in the end. I didn't want to I needed an actor who could deliver all that. And where do you find those? Like, where do you find it? And particularly someone who could work with, because Sam is given a performance that is quite extraordinary, actually. And if anyone watches it and they don't see that, I think, and I'm not biased either, it's quite extraordinary. It's a joy, it's a joy for me to watch it. I edited the movie as well. It was an absolute joy to edit it because they're so nuanced. Both of them are so nuanced, and to go up against what Sam is, how Sam is portraying, and Sam was in this character for a lot longer than anyone else, as a writer, as an actor, and to find an actor who could not only give me what I need within that Nazi character, and not make it cliched, make it quite disconcerting for an audience. I wanted an audience to maybe feel a bit disconcerted that they're laughing at something he says, but they should know they're laughing at him and his ridiculous nature, and not with him, if that makes any sense at all. So to find Oliver Boot, it was just it was as if it was just dropped in our lap, and like he was perfect physically, he was perfect, performance wise he was perfect, his dedication was on point, his respect for us, our process. And to be shooting in a pandemic, we shot this in July last year. That was just after the first lockdown. That alone took a lot of courage to say, okay, I'll come and do your short film. I'll play a Nazi, and we'll see how this goes. But I mean, and to find someone like Oliver Booth, I mean, anyone who sees the film will just see how extraordinary he is. But he had to be, considering who he was up against. I mean, the two performances are so nuanced in their own ways, and the chemistry is just, I could only, it sounds like I'm just blowing smoke off people. I'm just blowing smoke here, but I can only explain where, when you're editing something, that if anyone doesn't know this, it's usually months and months of looking at the same thing, and there's not one moment where I ever got tired of the edit of watching their performances, because it just flows and it fit. And we certainly found the right actors, Sam and Oliver. Like, I mean, clearly there is literally no one else I would have wanted to work with. And I love some people, but they wouldn't get the roles over who we cast in this film. And that's the truth.
So Sam, what was it like to act against Oliver, against this absolutely grotesque character who's not a caricature, but just is just very, very evil?
It was a joy to act opposite him. Oliver is a joy. These scenes are intense, and when we were in them, we were both in them. You know, I definitely felt that. But in between takes, he was just wonderful to be around, and I needed that. I had never done anything like this before. He is a professional actor who's worked on many, you know, great projects, both on theatre and TV and film. Whereas, you know, I was coming to this new. I've been a television broadcaster. That's very different to acting and in trying to embody somebody else's whole life and being. And so he totally respected me and gave me that confidence to be free in the role. You know, I at no point did he make me feel self-conscious, or it was, that confidence was what made the difference. And that Christopher mentioned the chemistry, and chemistry is such a weird thing that you just can't quite pinpoint, but it's something that when you see it and when you hear it and when you feel it, it's it's there. And in the room, I felt that we rehearsed beforehand, which really, really helped. And I met him then properly, and we went through the motions of doing the script and playing with how we would do it, and that helped me immensely. He at points is trying to be nice. He offers her, nice things throughout this film, but there's always a catch, and when he's menacing and when he turns, that's frightening. And it was to trust him, and for him to trust me. I think that was so important. And then, in the rehearsal to have, it was, just the three of us. It was Christopher, me and Oliver, and we worked through those scenes together, and that made all the difference for on the day when we shot, because, we had that common shorthand language that we all, spoke, and we, my personal self-confidence really grew from that. It was hugely nerve-wracking taking this on. So having someone like Oliver opposite me was an absolute joy to work with.
So let's talk about the day of the shoot. Let's talk about the fact that, Christopher, you're making a film in the middle, in between lockdowns. We're in a global pandemic. It's very difficult to access anything. What was your thinking? What was your rationale behind going then and there? Why didn't you wait?
Because I'm absolutely insane, maybe. Well, let me tell you, there's a reason, and I thought about this, and that's there's a reason why none of us, because it would freak anyone out, right? It was a complete, worldwide lockdown, and we had already booked locations. We had already more or less booked everyone, if I'm remembering correctly. So we're ready to go, from that January to shoot in July on the dates we actually shot. And then lockdown happened in March, but I knew we would get it done. I just knew, because, you know, the cast isn't huge in this. I know how to make things happen, particularly films, on quite limited crews. So I knew I could confidently make a film. That wasn't the issue, but obviously legally could we do it? But I mean, I said consistently to Sam, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. We just need to just keep focused. Because the first, way back in 2005, I'll just tell this story quickly. The first, I used to write and produce my own plays. So the first play I produced in London was going to happen in August 2005. And 4 weeks before we were due to open, the 7/7 bombings happened. And my play was set in Northern Ireland. You know, it dealt with terrorism. It dealt with aspects of that. And, you know, and I always remember back to that. Well, I got through that. I got stuff. I got something done. I got something on somehow through in that situation. So a pandemic is easy, but it wasn't easy, of course. You know, it was just, I knew we had to hold our nerve, and we kept everyone on side and just assuring people that, you know, Sam and we're capable of doing this. I mean, you know, me personally, you know, where I grew up as well, you know, I grew up through like a conflict and through numerous lockdowns, I suppose. I mean, so this was just like, okay, it'll be fine. So I think I suppose my background helped. My background professionally helped to get through this. And you know, Sam and I, we produced this together. Both of our skills and our intelligence got us through this as well, because we weren't concerned about the fact that we would have a limited crew, or there would be these restrictions within the location we were shooting, and we knew we were so prepared. I mean, shot lists were prepared. The look, it was almost cut before we even shot. We rehearsed. Everyone was prepared. Everyone knew exactly what we had to do, and we only had 3 days in total to shoot this film, and it's not a lot of time when you consider it was a few locations, and we must talk about the production design within the cell as well. We literally had 3 hours to paint that cell. So anyone who sees the film, the cell that Noor is kept in, that Ugne, our incredible production designer, painted that in 3 hours. So it was all hands on deck, and we needed to hire people who understood that and who wouldn't be overawed, you know, because it can be quite anxiety ridden in this whole situation anyway, not to mention a pandemic. Well, and no one knew what it was really either. So I think both Sam and I's backgrounds, you know, Sam's journalism background as well, like you're used to anxiety. I mean, I would assume, right? Like everything's last minute, and you're just waiting on that call, or you're waiting on that story, you know. So I think both of our backgrounds really helped us in this situation when I think about it. I mean, I had no doubt that we would make it, which is kind of seems crazy now, but literally no doubt. But it has to do with, I think, Sam and I, you know, we got through it. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but it's just the truth. I think we were the only. I think there was only one other production shooting in that period, if I'm correct, Sam. I think that was the Netflix series The Witcher and Us. So I think we were doing something right.
Kasia, as you know, being a journalist, you have to get things done. You just have to get on with it, you know, and often in really challenging situations, you've got a program to put together, it's going to go out on air, we better do it. And there was a little bit of that really helped me to kind of just go, okay, well, let's do this. The biggest challenge, though, was the whole film would have fallen down had we not had these key things. One was a Nazi costume, absolutely needed one. A proper authentic one. So the incredible angels who are world renowned for their costume departments opened for us and got us one. And they were barely, you know, everything was only just starting to open up after the first lockdown. So a huge thank you to them. Also, the wig that I wear in the film is so specific. And the wonderful Alex Rouse wig company opened up especially for us to do me this one wig. They were completely shut, and they are incredible. They've worked, you know, on The Crown. You know, they work on top end productions, and you know, I just had to take my chances. I had to email these people and go, what are the chances of me just coming in and, you know, getting access to this stuff? And, you know, without that, I guess that would have really hindered us hugely in making this. We needed those key elements. The locations as well were incredible to provide COVID secure locations for us, let us go ahead and film. We got access to Bewley Palace House, which is exactly where Noor was trained. You know, her and her colleagues from SOE were trained there to be spies, and they opened up for us and let us in and shoot outside their wonderful properties. And so, you know, there was a lot of goodwill towards this film and towards the project and towards us in helping making this film happen. And, you know, I'm incredibly grateful for that.
It's a testimony to the amount of research that you did to get that location that is so important, so crucial to Noor herself, but also the music. Now, the music, Noor's story has so many layers. When it comes to the music, this is in itself an incredible story, Sam. Just share it with us.
I'm glad you've asked about the music. It meant the world to me when I got the response that we could use the music. So in a nutshell, Noor and her family were musicians. They you know, were very accomplished musicians. And Noor's younger brother, Hidayat, after the war, after her death and learning of what happened to her, wrote and composed this beautiful piece of music in her memory. And I found it at the Imperial War Museum. And it took a lot of, this is where the journalist in me kicked in. It took a lot of digging to find out who owned the rights to this music and how I could access it. And so eventually I you know, unfortunately Hidayat is not with us anymore. So it was a case of finding out who the publisher of this music was, who had the rights to it. And so it was I found out it was his music partner who had worked with him over many years, Gary Sill, who lives in Vancouver. And so I tracked down Gary in Vancouver and I dropped him a line and I said, look, this is what I'm hoping to do. And I love this piece of music. And, you know, and he was so incredibly generous and kind and said he would love for us to use the music, and that, you know, Noor's brother would have been delighted had he been around to know that his music would be used in this way. And, you know, it meant the world to me to do that. There is a great interview with Hidayat held at the Imperial War Museum, actually. And he talks about the music, and he says that he wanted to convey Noor's moments of vulnerability and of torture. You know, he says that himself, that he didn't want that element to be forgotten in Noor's story, that she went through that. And so it just fit. It felt like it fit with what we wanted to do in this film so well. And yeah, that was a real turning point. That was a real moment where I thought, wow, this feels special. This feels really special now. And, you know, the next step after that was after we did it, you know, of course, I sent it to the family and, you know, to Gary to see the film. That was nerve-wracking, and their responses have been extraordinary. You know, you know, they've just called it extremely moving. They've said that it's awe-inspiring and heart-wrenching. I mean, these are words that I never imagined, you know, to come from the family. And so to have the family's support in that way means means so much.
It's such an extraordinary story. Noor's story is so extraordinary. The way you've researched it, Sam, the way you brought it to life, the story of the music as well. Christopher, I guess when you meet somebody like Sam who has all of this knowledge and this passion, I guess it's just so compelling, isn't it? Sam described it as an obsession. It's not an obsession. It's a fascination, and it's bringing somebody's story to life. I guess you just couldn't do it without her, could you?
No, not at all. I mean, to be honest with you, I like to just write my own stuff. I like to just get on with it. And it's very rare that I would even want to collaborate in this way, you know, because it's a lot of work. But, you know, just Sam's passion about this. It wasn't just about Noor. It wasn't just about the script. It was, I mean, Sam's dedication and passion and is certainly appealing. It's certainly attractive, and it certainly got me on board really from day one. But I mean, I was reluctant to suggest that I would want to direct it for a long time, though. I mean, I thought maybe I wasn't the right person, but more and more we talked through the script, the more and more I found out about Noor, the more and more I found out about, you know, what made Sam passionate about the story, the more and more I wanted to direct it. And luckily she said that, you know, she would like to collaborate with me too. So I'm the lucky one. I just it's rare to really find screenwriters, find actors, find producers, co-producers who are as honest and straight down the line as Sam. You know, they do occur, but they do happen, but it's very rare. And, you know, I can recognize that immediately. And, you know, we had discussions about how I want the direction I wanted to take the film. You know, it's not easy, you know, it's not an easy discussion to have, because it's, you know, the direction I take is, you know, it's both classical, but, you know, like we mentioned before, it's quite violent at moments. And it's most people would have probably shied away from that suggestion, you know, and in my mind, would have took the easier route, which isn't a bad thing, but it just, I mean, that's just, you know, human nature. But what I respect about Sam is that Sam brought respect for my thoughts on the script too. And of course, you know, as a director, you know, if you're going to spend this much time on something as a producer, director, and the editor, then, you know, you gotta kind of share that passion as well, you know. And Sam has much more passion for the project than I do, even though I've got a lot, because it's even closer to her, and that's what's attractive about it. And I'm just, you know, I'm the lucky one. I'm blessed to be able to tell Noor's story, but I'm also blessed to be able to, you know, try and assist in whatever way I can in Sam telling Noor's story as well. And to think what Noor's family said, that's the biggest it's the biggest tribute to us, and it's the biggest tribute to Noor again. And I'm happy that her family, they really understood what the direction I wanted to take, you know. And it wasn't easy for them. It's not easy for anyone to watch. But it's real, it is truthful, and it's honest. And I think really above all else, I mean, that truthfulness, that honesty, and that realism really comes from Sam's passion for telling the story the way she did, because it's bold and it's brave, and, you know, it's clear. It's, yeah, I'm getting emotional in a minute. I do feel blessed, and it's an honor to be able to tell Noor's story. Now it's a very bold move for Sam to, you know, want me as a director, and I appreciate that. It turns out it's probably the correct move, but we'll see. We'll see. I just feel really blessed and honored to be part of this.
Sam, we feel your passion and the care with which you told Noor's story. When we watch it, we understand the brutality and just the courageousness and everything that she gave up. What do you hope that when people watch Liberté, when they watch your film and what you've done, what do you want them to take away, that kind of lasting memory of Noor?
Ultimately, I'd really love people to first and foremost remember her name and remember her and remember who she was, really, and what she did for us You know, we are where we are now. She was one of those cogs in that wheel, you know, that won the war. And I want people to look for more information about her. I want people to find out more about the other women who served. I want people to dig out these stories, that just because Hollywood hasn't graced us with the, you know, blockbuster movies about them doesn't mean that those stories are not out there. And you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of these stories that we should absolutely know more about, and these people that we should know more about. And I just ultimately hope that it gives people a clearer idea of who took part in, you know, who served in these wars. And it was a diverse group of people who served in these wars, and they were in it together, side by side. And they were loyal, and they sacrificed so much. And I really hope that that is, you know, a key lesson for people. I also hope that they realize that stereotypes are nonsense, because here's a woman who smashes every stereotype about women, about Asian women, about Muslim women, you know, and it's I hope it's a fresh way of looking at what people are capable of, and you know, what people can achieve and what they can do, and not to underestimate people. So yeah, I hope people take away a few things from it.
Congratulations on the film. It absolutely does smash all the stereotypes. Let's remember her name, Noor Inayat Khan. Sam Naz, Christopher Hanvey, thank you so much for bringing Noor's story to us. Congratulations on Liberté, and we are very much looking forward to watching it and learning so much more about Noor Inayat Khan. Thank you.